Welcome back to Maria. I'm here with my co-host, Christina Carrica-Haley, and we're welcoming our good friend, Congressman Ruben Gallego from the great state of Arizona. Congressman, thank you for being with us and welcome to Maria.
Thank you for having me.
So, Congressman, you have been front and center on this fight for DACA and for our dreamers for so many years now, and you have a great personal story as well. We had one of the dreamers just on with us talking about how personal this has been for her and how impactful and frankly difficult this fight has been. What can you tell her to expect in the coming months?
Well, look, we have a little break yesterday. The Supreme Court said that the way that the president went about rescinding DACA was illegal. But unfortunately, also gave him a roadmap about how to do it legally. And that's what we should all be very scared of. And I think the president, unfortunately, is going to use that roadmap, especially in an election year, to rile up his base. So what we need to do is be strong, be resilient, and the dreamer community, if anything, they're the most resilient community you've ever met. They're the most innovative community you've ever met, and we need to win this election. That's just point blank. This president, given the time, given the power, he will rescind DACA and he will start deporting people. He wants to eliminate immigration altogether in this country, legal immigration. And I saw this when I was, trying to negotiate a DACA a compromise when President Trump first got in. And the one thing when I was talking to Chief of Staff Kelly was that they wanted us to, number one, come up with a compromise with Steve King and Tom Cotton, which is never going to happen. And in order, and part of that compromise had to be an overall reduction of legal immigration. So visas, green cards, family reunification, all the things that are very important to stabilize this country in general, they want it all out the window. So we need to be clear. We won a victory, but it's a small battle. The real war here is to make sure that we get Donald Trump out of office, Vice President Biden in office, and that we also give him a Senate so we can pass comprehensive immigration reform. And that is the overall goal here. That is the big victory right there. Because if not, we're just going to be going from DACA to another DACA to another DACA. We don't want that. We want the ability to legalize these families so that way they don't have to live under this constant pressure and the anxiety I hear from them all the time. It's not fair. It's not fair to any human being.
Well, Congressman, I appreciate that you bring up the elections and the importance of that. And one, thank you for all your service and specifically all the work that you consistently do on the Dreamer front and immigration front as a whole. One thing I do want to point out, and you mentioned it, that the election's not just about getting Trump out. It's about retaking the Senate as well, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
As I'm the eternal optimist that we might, hopefully get both houses and the presidency, we had that in the 111th Congress under President Obama. Mm-hmm. And we were still unable to pass the DREAM Act and make really institutional changes for Dreamers. So how do you see that going about? Let's say, hopefully we have the supermajority and we've got the houses. What can you do different?
What we have to do is not just win, but we have to win overwhelmingly, and we have to win in states where there's a lot of Latinos. So it sends a very powerful message if you win Arizona, you win Florida, and you win Texas. And then you create this moment of doubt within the Republican Party when they realize that there is now an existential threat to their ability to win as a national party, right? Because you're losing Texas, you're losing Arizona, you're done, right? Maybe you win Florida once in a while, maybe not. But at this point, your chances of ever coming back into the presidency becomes slimmer and slimmer. And so you have to create this kind of epiphany. And I kind of saw that in 2012. There was a short time period once Obama won re-election where you saw Republicans saying, you know what, immigration's a big stone around our neck. Let's just get rid of it, get it done with. I think we have to do that again. We have to win strongly. In 2011, our biggest holdup wasn't that we didn't have the votes in the House Senate. The figure is that we had the filibuster. And I think, again, we may have to deal with that situation. But the larger we run up the numbers, right? If we win Arizona, we miraculously win Texas. There's big Latino populations in Georgia, by the way. I think people forget also. And of course, Florida. I think then you're dealing with situations where senators start recognizing that they're next on the chopping block, right? Because if you're the Republican senators from Florida do you really want to be the person that blocked comprehensive immigration reform? If you're the Republican senator from Texas, hopefully he's not there anymore. But do you want to be that known as that person? And so that's what we have to do. We have to set up the political situation so that way we actually have an opportunity to really essentially scare them to passing this.
Congressman, one of the most important things that I heard you say is that the Latino vote matters everywhere, not just in California, not just in Florida. Texas is right now a state that is in play. And the fact that that is in play for the Democrats is incredible. And it shows just how much Joe Biden's momentum is. But we can't rest on our laurels, right? The polls right now show Joe Biden behind Trump in Texas by 1 point only. But we have to make sure that everyone gets involved. And you are absolutely right to say Trump could come back next week and say, okay, the Supreme Court didn't like how I did this last time. How about now? Right. And I can see him try to do this before the election and try to deport the 700,000 dreamers that we have, because that's how he riles up his base. What is your message to the Latinos who still might think, oh, well, maybe my vote doesn't matter?
The most important thing to remember is that maybe you think your vote doesn't matter, but to that DACA family, your vote matters. And you should be voting for them in their interests. Maybe you don't align 100% with the values of the Democratic Party or the values of Biden, but you value as a Latino family, right? And when we're talking about these DACA recipients, they're not this amorphous blob. These men and women now are a lot of them are in their 30s. They have families now. They're established in their communities. They have kids in schools. There are doctors. There are lawyers. There are teachers. Many of them are actually on the front lines as essential workers right now. They're sacrificing everything they can for this country. All we're asking you as a Latino is to go out and vote this one time, because it may not matter to you, but it matters to that family. And you can go your whole life without voting again, and maybe your life will not change significantly, but you are potentially giving somebody a death warrant by not voting. You're sending people back to countries, some of them that are unstable, and more importantly, to places where it is no longer their country. They don't recognize those places. Many of them didn't even ever, say for being born there, have ever even seen it or even spoken the language. And for us as a country to somehow allow this type of mass deportation, it would be the biggest blemish on the history of the United States since, I would say, we interred the Japanese Americans during World War II.
Well said, Congressman. We're going to have more with you after the break. Stay with us. This is Maria. Welcome back to Maria, amigos. I'm here with my co-host, Christina, and we are still here with Congressman Ruben Gallego.
Congressman, you were just talking about kind of the importance of voting and getting out there. And you have a unique ability where in the state of Arizona, it's very purple. So you're constantly having to talk to people who unequivocally agree with you and those that, maybe are on some other sides of issues. And taking it to the dreamer and kind of your personal experience, being that you served in our military. And do you ever kind of try to point out that I think it's 820 plus currently dreamers currently serving in the military and or signed up to serve in the military? And does that type of messaging work? Or how do you talk to the more kind of Republicans, conservatives in your state to get them to coalesce around this?
Well, the one thing I think people forget is actually the DREAM Act polls really well with Republicans too. It's in the mid 70s when you poll it. So it's doesn't take that much convincing. Now, the question is, can you make it a priority for them when they are talking to their legislators about it, right? Because among many other things, it's not the top things. But I try to remind them about how essential these, Americans in name, but in name, are to this country. So not just the people that obviously are serving overseas. These families are mixed families. So I have a lot of DACA friends who they are documented, but their brothers and sisters are citizens. And some of them are serving in the military. So we're going to be separating out these families that are sacrificing for their country right now. Again, let's look at COVID-19. Who do you think is cleaning those hospitals? Who do you think the majority of those nurses are? Some of them that are the doctors, right? who do you think right now on the opposite end is killing the animals for us to eat? Who is pulling our food? Who's stocking the shelves? Right? Not every DACA student needs to be this perfect American story, but every DACA recipient is American, and they're part of our survival right now. And let me tell you, I've done all of those jobs I just kind of mentioned, minus the medical field. But I've worked in grocery stores. I've worked in meat packing factories. That's tough work. And the only reason we're able to all gain our COVID-19 pounds is because a big portion of that population kept going back to work.
That's exactly right, Congressman. You brought up a very critical point, and I would love for you to bring us into the conversations that you have with your colleagues on the Hill, your Republican colleagues, who they know that even the majority of Republicans believe that we should protect Dreamers. In fact, 60% of Trump supporters believe that we should protect Dreamers. Yet these members of Congress are so afraid to go up against Trump himself that they don't even want to stand up and speak for their constituents, who the majority of which support the Dreamers. So what do you say to them? How can they be moved, if they can be moved?
So I remember in 2017 when we were trying to push a discharge petition for the DREAM Act, when Paul Ryan was still as speaker. And in a lot of my conversations with members, especially those that were on the bubble going into 2018, I actually did tell them, like, look, polling shows that this is popular, and polling shows that Trump is not popular, right? So there's a chance you're going to go down with this man, right? And if you wanted to step out away from the president to show that you have some level of moderation or some level of independence, this is the safe space to do it in, right? You try to do this at any other kind of litmus test, you're going to end up getting, I think, primaried or something. So you have your choice. What is your poison, right? Do you want to risk a primary, or do you want to risk a general? And to my dismay, and to their, unfortunately for them, they all lost. Everyone that I told them exactly that lost. And they didn't gain anything. They should have listened. And we could have had a very strong, powerful message. And some of them lost in some very strong Latino numbers areas, like David Valadeo's district, for example. That was his example, opportunity to step out, and just didn't do it. So this train is moving. The question is, are you on the train, or are you going to be under the train? That's what this all comes down to.
So talking about a moving train, and I know you're a supporter of Vice President Biden's presidential campaign. How does he not only get this conversation of Dreamers and immigration going, but how do we kind of get everybody involved in this conversation, right? The folks that know it's right, but maybe don't want to use that as their primary reason for voting for somebody. How do you kind of see that campaign bringing everybody, I guess, getting everybody on the train, so to speak?
Well, I got to say, we should really look at the efforts that Black Lives Matters did, right? Because when Black Lives Matters started, it was largely young African-American men and women that were the activists and pushing a very important issue. But they kept going year after year, right? They never gave up, even when it became deeply unpopular with certain people. And look at what happened now with the George Floyd case, or not the case, the murder, I should say. And they were so organized, and they were able to bring all the issues they've been talking about for years to the forefront because they met the moment. And now we, because as a society, we all benefit from this, are going to have some legislative victories that I think are going to make a big difference in stopping, the mistreatment of, African Americans and people in general by police. I think we are in that situation where we have popular opinion, but it's not the top priority for voters and for politicians. I think once we get to another situation, for example, when Trump reissues his order, that's when we have to hit while the iron is hot, strike while the iron is hot. We need to get out there. We need to put the stories out of the family members that are going to be affected by this. And we need to put the politicians online and ask them, like, where are you when it comes to this, right? This is not a theoretical proposition anymore. Either you're going to be for deporting these families, or you're not. We can't have this message just be about this amorphous blob of human beings. It has to be, Maria, the nurse, or Tomas, the organizer, or Jose, the construction worker, or just, someone who's a father or who's a daughter. We need to bring that. We need to humanize this, because the way you break through in America is you talk to people's hearts, and that controls the politics more than the brain.
Congressman, tell us, what is the most effective way for Latinos, and frankly, for any American who wants to communicate with you, right? I think a lot of people believe that you are way up here, they're this little person down here, and that why would you listen to them? Can you set us straight on that, please?
To the dismay of my staff, I actually respond to people on Twitter too. So like I actually keep in contact with people.
You do,
And like
I know.
I know, drives them nuts. But
As
it's
a
actually a
former
really good way.
staffer, that's
I know, but it's a great way to keep in contact and break through the bubble. People will tweet at me for constituent services on my Twitter account, and I read it and I send it over to my staff. That's our job. Like it's actually the core basis of being a member of Congress. Like you may vote the wrong way, but you need to be available. And that's, unfortunately, I think there are some members that skip that. Even now, I have like every other week town halls in my district, and we have different topics that we talk about. Last time we were talking about how to go safely back to work and how to have a safe reopening. We're going to have another town hall about sending your kids back to school, right? With professionals, healthcare professionals, and as well as education professionals. So we're still trying to do that and find the best ways to do it. But it's also generationally different too. So some generations are better on social media. Some of them you have to have like a town hall there physically for them, and you just adapt to all of them.
Congressman, thank you so much for illustrating how politics is personal. And thank you for taking the time to come and talk to us today on Maria.
Thank you. Thank you both. Have a good day.
Amigos, after the break, we're going to welcome political scientist Matt Barreto. Stay with us. This is Maria. Welcome back to Maria, amigos. I'm your host, Maria Cardona. So we took a look at how DACA impacts real people. We talked to Karen. We just talked to Congressman Gallego, who told us how this is going to be an issue legislatively. Now I'd like to bring on Matt Barreto, political scientist, to talk to us a little bit about what he's seeing in his research and what this means for the future of DACA and the future of the country. Matt, thank you so much for joining us on Maria.
You got it. Thanks so much for inviting me, Maria. I'm so happy to be here.
So things are moving so quickly in the political sphere. Tell us what you are seeing in your research in terms of DACA, the broader issue of immigration reform, and how do you think it's going to impact the 2020 elections?
Well, we know that immigration has always been an important issue to the Latino community. It doesn't always show up as the number one issue of what they want action on now. That's oftentimes healthcare and jobs and wages. But immigration does show up as the number one issue in terms of our community and what we feel and what we know, because these are people in our community. And it's important for people to remember that undocumented immigrants are connected to voters. So immigration is a heartfelt issue. It is an important issue. And this DACA decision is going to keep it as an issue in the 2020 election. We know that Trump and Stephen Miller are going to try to mess this up. They're going to try to dirty things up. They're going to get nasty. And our community is ready to respond. I think we're seeing a lot of energy right now, a lot of mobilization. And this issue is going to continue through Election Day.
You're kind of giving a nod to the fact that the Latino community is not a monolith. I think all of us that are part of it recognize that. But sometimes folks outside of the community don't realize that. How are you accounting for those differences within our community when you are polling so that politicians and voters really understand what the community wants and needs?
That's a great question, Christina. I think people don't understand how diverse the Latino community is and how you need different approaches. You need different methodologies. And so right now we're trying to make sure that when we do a poll of Latinos, it's not just, 124 Latinos that you might see in that Quinnipiac poll, but that we're, first of all, providing a large sample so that we can look inside our community. We want to make sure we have enough immigrants, we have enough Spanish speakers, but that we also have enough youngsters, people under the age of 30 who are US born and are English dominant. You need to have a variety of methodologies and making sure that that data is accurate. I'm still seeing today in national polls, those samples being done English only. Are those samples not including enough opportunity for cell phone completes or text message completes? You have to get with the times, okay? And that's what we're doing at Latino Decisions, and we're just trying to, bring that forward and make sure that people, when they're looking at Latino samples, please, let's make this an accurate reflection of our diverse community.
Matt, one of the things that I think is so critical to talk about is we're seeing all these polls where Joe Biden is way ahead of Donald Trump. And you get the feeling that a lot of people may start feeling comfortable. What do you say to Latinos who think, well, my vote doesn't really matter because look at the polls?
Yeah, we saw this in 2016. So I think that's the first lesson.
Yep.
Is that people
right.
are not going to rest. People are not going to rest. We need to continue to remember the only poll that counts are the votes cast on Election Day. And the polls are trending in a positive direction right now for Vice President Biden, no question. But it's early and things can change. And so take that energy, take that anger that you have right now and channel it into your own participation, but expand that to your friends, your family. Who else is in your network? Who else can you encourage to make sure that they stay committed? Joe Biden might be ahead and might win the presidency, but if the Democrats do not win the Senate, it's going to be nearly impossible to move a comprehensive immigration reform bill, as well as so many other issues that Latinos care about. And so we need to pick up those Senate seats in states that'll be hard, like Texas and Arizona and Colorado. There are a lot of competitive Senate seats that Latinos can influence. And so just keep working hard every day, keep that commitment. And the polls are informative to let us know how the trends are. But of course, they don't elect the president and they don't elect senators. That's us. We need to get out and vote.
And talking about that election, when you're saying these states and things like that, I think it's important to say, some folks are saying, well, Bernie had so much more of the Latino vote going into this, but they had a lot of the votes in the states that would likely already win the Senate races. But in states like Texas and Arizona and Colorado, you tend to have this other part of our community that tends to be slightly more entrepreneurial focused or education focused and things like that, that take a step back sometimes from just immigration reform. Are you seeing that different messaging is registering with them into hopefully galvanizing them to get out to vote for these Senate races that are so important?
Well, you definitely need to make the Senate race about the state and about that senator. There's going to be some national energy this year, and there's going to be some national messaging around just the mess that Trump has gotten us into. Okay, so we need to channel that. There's no doubt. But then you need to make that election about what has that senator done? What have these local senators done to stand up for Latinos on the issue that you care about, whether it's think about these small business loans. And it is true, Latinos have very high rates of entrepreneurship and self-employment. Why were we left out of those PPP loans? Why couldn't we get access to those at the same rates that some of these large, small corporations, small businesses? So I think there's ways to hold those folks accountable, but let's look at what those senators are doing. Channel the national energy, but make it about that state and say why we need to elect voices more friendly and understanding of our community, who listen to the needs in our community and will stand up for us.
Matt, before we let you go, you know that in 2016, Trump won by roughly 66,000 votes in Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania. Can Latinos make the difference in these states?
Latinos are growing in those states. First of all, Pennsylvania has a huge Latino electorate. Almost 500,000 eligible to vote. And it's not all in Philadelphia, it's spreading out across the state of Pennsylvania.
Wow,
so let's focus on that.
I didn't realize it was that much. That's amazing.
It's really, the Pennsylvania electorate is growing. And if you don't have a Latino strategy in Pennsylvania, then you're falling behind. You need one there. But Michigan and Wisconsin, también, you have over 200,000 eligible voters. Wisconsin even larger, 275,000 Latino eligible voters. And we lost these states by a handful. So there needs to be Latino mobilization. Don't just focus on Arizona. Arizona is going to be a critical swing state to flip, but a smart Latino strategy in Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania That can be the story. Black and Latino voters in Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania, that can be the election story on the day of election night if there is smart investment, because our numbers are really growing in those Midwest states.
Matt, thank you so much. So informative. Thank you for being on Maria.
Fue un placer. Anytime, Maria, invite me back.
Amigos, stay with us. This is Maria.